Okay, so we have started the recording for the rain garden class. Say it should take anywhere from about an hour to maybe an hour and a half. Um, but if at any point anybody needs to step out, feel free to. This will be recorded so everyone can access it later. Um, Alrighty, so we're going to get started. It's a little bit after 6. I think it's 6:01. So here we go. Okay. Um, so before I go into the class, I want everybody to know a little bit about me and why I'm here and why I'm presenting today. So my name is Abby Costello. I work for Medina County Soil and Water Conservation District. I am their watershed education specialist. And what that means is that I approach everything I do from a watershed perspective. I'll get into that in a minute, but just wanted to point out that in this picture, I am with a Eastern hellbender. It's also known as a snot otter or devil dogs. They're Ohio's largest amphibian and they're endangered, and I absolutely love them. So I get a little nerdy when it comes to protecting water, just because I love protecting all the animals that live in it. Um, so when I say I approach things from a watershed perspective, what that means is that I end up looking at the whole area of land that drains into the same body of water. That's what a watershed is. And I look at how what happens on that whole area of land affects the water health and everything about water as a whole. Because everything that we do on the land affects our water, and that's water quality, and water quantity. So that ties into rain gardens um, because rain gardens are something that we do on the land that help protect our water and improve its health and everything like that. So before we get too deep into it, I'm curious what got you guys interested in rain gardens. You can put it in the chat if you want. I know your name's on there, but if you want to put like where you're at and what got you interested, that would be great. Just so I can see, why everybody's here today. Um, we have about 5 people in the chat, and so hopefully I get to see, why you guys came here. So, and you can include things like what are your goals? And that could be, are you looking for a simple way to help out? Are you looking at having a huge, showy garden? Or just like what you're hoping to get out of this class? So let's see. Okay, let's say I don't see anyone. Oh, there we go. Um, Oh, it says, Linda, thank you for chiming in. You're retired, but looking to continue with education to help our Earth. Well, that is great. Um, and then C. Clifford, you're looking for details on how to install one. So we're going to go into both of those things. We're going to look at how rain gardens help the Earth and also the details of installing them. So what we're going to cover is pretty much what is a rain garden, what is stormwater, the parts of a rain garden, how to plan one, the plants you can put into it. And then we go into the construction and maintenance. Um, oh, and it looks like some other people are interested, because they've run off, washing away a hill on their backyard and they're curious about that. So yeah, when you get onto a hilly side, it does get a little tricky, but we can go into how to, manage with rain gardens. So, and we'll go into all the different ways that they can look too. So, some people who are attending this class are people that I've actually gone out and looked at their property. If you live in Medina County, say we go out to people's property all the time to, look at if this practice can go in, or if you do have a lot of runoff going over your property, we can come out for free, take a look, and see what recommendations that we have. So some people in this class are part of the rain garden program that we're offering, where this class is required. Other people might just be tuning in to learn a little bit more. But so we have a range of people in the audience. For some of this might be new and some of this might be a review. So something that we have available is we have the Rain Garden How-To Guide available online. I'm putting that in the chat right now. Let's say that is the link that takes you to our Rain Garden How-To Guide. This will be available later too. I am recording it and we will put it on YouTube. On our YouTube channel, we will have this guide in the links below it, but if you want a hard copy, you can always come to our office. We will be referencing this guide throughout the book, but you don't, or throughout the presentation, but you don't need the book with you today. But it's there if you need it. It's really, really helpful. Let's see. Okay, so a little bit about rain gardens is, first of all, there's some confusion about what a rain garden is. Some people have a wet area in their yard that they just want to retire and plant native plants in there so they don't have to mow it. But a rain garden is not just simply a wet area that you plant. It is actually, it looks like a flower bed, but it is built specifically to capture stormwater, filter it out, let it soak in, and it also is made so it doesn't hold water very long. So in this picture, you can see that water is being directed to the rain garden, and that is one of the main features, is that when it's raining, water is being directed straight to it. Okay. So one of the reasons why we want people to install rain gardens is it's a stormwater solution. So it captures stormwater, it slows it down, it spreads it out because it's disconnecting that downspout from a storm sewer, and it lets that water soak in. But that pulls into the question, well, what is stormwater and why do we even care about it? So stormwater simply is water that is from rain or snow melt or precipitation. We have recently had a lot of stormwater in the shape of snow, a lot. But when that starts melting, that all goes into our storm drains. And so in Ohio, we are very plentiful with stormwater. And that can become an issue when that stormwater, that rain or snow melt, doesn't actually go into the ground. When it runs across the surface, it's called runoff. And that is a big problem in Medina because when the water enters our storm drains, it goes straight into our waterways. It's not filtered. It has no way of getting cleaned up once it gets into storm drains. So that means that that includes any trash, any fertilizer, any animal waste, livestock. We have some in Medina. It can contain eroded soil or car pollution or yard waste. So that is all things that can be taken to our streams via stormwater. So some of the trends that we have right now in Ohio, excuse me, is well, especially in Medina, we're getting less areas for that stormwater to soak in. So you can see in the little picture below, when there is a natural ground cover area, there's about 25% that of the rain that goes into the soil, like at a shallow layer, and then 25% goes in deep. So that's half of our water soaks in and 40% evaporates. But as land starts developing, our stormwater doesn't have that land to soak in. Now, Medina's not at 75% or 100% developed like the other picture shows. But when land does get developed like that, you have half of the water running off. So instead of 10% running off, you're now having 5 times that amount of water turning into floodwater, picking up pollution, all that kind of stuff. So Medina is somewhere in between. But as we develop more, we need to think about where are we sending that water. Something else that comes up is as climate is changing a bit, we've kind of started noticing in Ohio, which is in the green area in that picture of the states, we have increased flooding. Now, we're also really close to the extreme precipitation area. So what this means is we're getting the same amount of water, but it's coming down really heavy, really fast, and it can't soak in as much as it used to. So then we are having a lot of runoff and a lot of runoff issues. And that can lead to larger issues. Like this is a picture of Lake Erie in 2013. I don't know how many of you unfortunately remember when Toledo and other parts of the state didn't have drinking water because of an algae bloom. Well, part of that is because of all the stormwater runoff taking things like fertilizer and nutrients to the lake. Lake Erie is also really shallow, so it has a bigger chance to have these problems than some of the other Great Lakes. So this all brings us right around back to rain gardens. They are built to capture this stormwater. They slow it down because that downspout is now not pouring water into a storm sewer that's speeding it away into a stream and causing flooding. It's now slowing it down, it spreads it out, and it lets it soak in. So this keeps pollutants out of our streams. It prevents land loss due to like rushing, flooding streams. It replenishes groundwater, and it also when it's replenishing that groundwater, it helps protect us from like drought conditions later. So it's extra benefit. So one of the biggest parts of a rain garden is how it is shaped. So it's not just a hole in the ground that you plant. It's not just very shallow or like at an angle. It's always supposed to be flat at the bottom. So you can think of it kind of as like a bathtub, that very flat bottom, except the bottom's like a sponge. So as it fills up, it's nice and flat and it slowly soaks it down and lets that water go back into the ground. So one other thing that's important is you can see in that little bathtub picture, there's an overflow. And that is so when your rain garden gets full, it has the excess water, especially in those heavy rain events, it has a place to go. So some of the main parts of a rain garden, this is breakdown of all the parts that you need to know. So it's not too many. Number one is the inflow or the inlet. And you can see in this picture that's either through like a gravel over the ground flow or it's through a pipe. The next thing you have is the basin, that's the dugout part. The berm, which is number 3 towards the bottom. It's a little hard to tell in this picture. Oh, but there's that little close-up I forget right there. It's a little ledge that bumps up to keep that water in there. And then you have the overflow or outlet where excess water goes. And then you have native plants. So that is all the parts of a rain garden. Does anybody have questions about the purpose or the anatomy of a rain garden. You can feel free to unmute yourself. I think I made it possible where people can unmute themselves. Um, but yeah, or you can put your questions in the chat. Um, we are going to go into how to do all the details in a little bit. Let's see. Okay, so we have a question. How do you keep grass out of the rain garden and only on the berm? Um, well, it is kind of like a garden that you do have to weed. Um, or once it fills up with native plants, those native plants will outcompete the grass, so that you don't have to keep weeding. Okay, it looks like Linda has a question. Go ahead, Linda.
Yes, are there any cities or townships that have regulations, codes that say you cannot disconnect your downspout from the sewer system? Uh,
So
I could
not
have
in
sworn that Brunswick years ago, back in the 70s, had it to where you could not disconnect.
so some places used to. In Medina County right now, there are no limitations about disconnecting downspouts, which is really nice. I think when you get up to certain areas around Cleveland, there might be some, but it really depends, especially because sometimes if houses are like super, super close, it could become a problem, but you, nothing in Medina County. So, okay, let's see. Any other questions, Linda? I think I saw Callie, you had your hand up.
No, I didn't. Sorry.
Oh, sorry. Alrighty. Okay. So, and if there's any questions along the way, you can always just like put it in the chat. I am keeping an eye on it too. So, but we do have questions kind of between the different sections. Okay. So, okay, now we're getting into how to get started, things to look out for, and like how you plan your location for your rain garden. And for some people that are in the Make It Rain program that we offer here, I've already come out and helped you do this. But for anybody who's not part of that program, we're going to go over all the things you need to think about. So, like I said, this might be some review, but okay. So, for planning, you always want to plan around your utility lines. Those are very important. But it's also important when you start planning to kind of make a goal list. Like, what kind of work are you okay doing? What kind of tools do you have or need? And in that guide that I posted the link to, um, it on page 28, it has a list of all the tools you'll need, some that are recommended, some that you don't, that are optional. Then also what your budget is. So it's always good to look through the book. You can call us at any time with any questions, if you have questions that pop up along the way. Um, but when it comes to finding your location, you want to start with like a process of elimination. Like, what do you need to avoid? This will help you solve a lot of problems down the way. So, um, you want to avoid a lot of these obstacles, and that can be your utilities for sure. Tree roots, we'll go into that a little bit. It can make a rain garden difficult. Sidewalks can be an obstacle. Your foundation, you always want to keep a distance between your foundation. We'll go into that too. Septic systems and floodplains. So these are a list of obstacles that you really want to think about before you start going into it. So the biggest one is your utilities. So before you do any digging, you're always supposed to call, oops, um, it is the law. you If you call them too, it also protects you from being held liable for damages and whatnot. If you're in the Make It Rain program, you need to do this and you need to keep the number that Oops gives you for your ticket. But if you're just doing this on your own, it's just, we'll go over why it's important. So, first of all, I'm not an Oops expert, but I did call them before this program and talk to them about how this process works. And this is just my understanding. They're the experts. So when you want to dig, you can either call them through 811 or you can go to eDig. Um, and you put in your request. They will send you an email confirming that they have gotten your request. They have 48 hours to come out, mark everything, and then they give you 10 working days after your receipt. And so they'll come out, mark it, and then you're supposed to do all your work in 10 days. But with this is a planning project. So sometimes you might have to call them twice so that you can call them, they come out, mark everything, then you know where you can or can't plan. But they give you a 10-day window of protection where if you call them and they mark it and you don't dig there and you hit something, I think there's like some liability protection if you do it within that 10 days. Um, so that's the most legal mumbo jumbo kind of stuff we have to go over here. So oops is important. It is a law. And if you do it how they recommend it, you get some protections from damages. So um, another obstacle is tree roots. So trees already do a lot to soak up water. So putting a rain garden under a tree doesn't necessarily improve stormwater soaking in. And sometimes if you are directing a lot more water to that area, depending on the type of tree, you could damage that tree. So I always say, if you got a tree, just leave it be, and look for a different location for your rain garden. Um, Another thing to think about is your foundation. And all these obstacles are also listed in that book, so I think on page 9. So it's all there to reference, so you don't have to remember everything right now. But with the foundation and with basement windows or even your neighbor's foundation, you want to keep a minimum of 10 feet away from the foundation. So I think with the question about, are there limitations about or like rules that say you can't disconnect, if houses are packed really, really close, you might not be able to disconnect your downspout just because of the 10-foot minimum around the foundations. But luckily in Medina, it's not something we come across very often. This house, they wanted to have a rain garden and they wanted it right in front. And there wasn't 10 feet between this spot and their front porch. However, the foundation of their house was further back by the front door. So they were able to put it in this spot. Something else that they did to help was you can see the one red line is pointing to the downspout. That is where the inflow is, and it doesn't start soaking into the rain garden until the second red arrow. So it's even further away than right against the house. So sometimes tight spots are possible. Now, if you have obstacles that you think are unavoidable, it's helpful if you look at, can you go over them or under them? So I have never seen this in real life. Like I just saw a picture of it and I thought it was so neat. The downspout that is shaped like a stream and there's fish swimming up it. And it was a way that this business was able to get their water over an HVAC unit. So they made it really wide to handle all the water, and they also made it really artistic. So, can you go over your HVAC? If you have sidewalk, can you go under your sidewalk? I don't think too many people have that metalworking skill that that fish downspout had. But this family, they didn't want to cut into their sidewalk and they didn't want to just have a downspout hanging. So they built like a lattice work and they went over their sidewalk and then they planted around it. So the plants here in the picture are fake, but that was what they are working towards. So it's all about how you approach your your garden or your obstacles, I should say. Um, this house had to go underneath their walkway, so they dug a little ditch underneath it, and the up and down blue arrow is where they are planting their rain garden. So they went underneath, but they also did it this way because if you look at the neighbors, they have two downspouts. It's a little hard to see in this picture, but those two downspouts are pointing to the same rain garden. So this rain garden is serving two houses, and the homeowner just went under their sidewalk to make it possible. So, um, sorry, I just need a little sip of water for a second. Okay, so another obstacle that's important to know, and this is still something that a lot of houses in Medina have, or like Medina County, is what most people call a septic system. So it's a household sewage treatment system. If you talk to the health department, it's not technically a septic system, but it's what everybody calls them. So one important thing is you don't want to send extra water to your septic system or to the leach field. So that's definitely an obstacle you want to avoid, along with floodplains. There's a lot of protections around floodplains. That is the area next to a stream or river where when the river rises, um, it has that extra area to flow over. So it is a plane of land that the floodwaters go over. So putting a rain garden there is not a good idea. Disturbing land in that area is not a good idea. So, alrighty. Any questions about obstacles? I know that was kind of a like a quick go through on obstacles. Okay, so no questions there. Okay, so we're looking pretty good for questions on obstacles. Alrighty, so we'll keep going. Next thing is about looking for a location. Now that you know what obstacles to avoid, you want to look at what you want. And that is, where is your water source coming from? You know, how are you going to get water to that area? And also, what is the light level for the plants that you'll be planting in there? Now, rain gardens can thrive in any light condition, but if you are looking for, like, if one of your goals is like a really beautiful, showy rain garden, sometimes you have a wider plant selection if you are in a sunny area. There's a lot more plants you can find that can love having wet soil in the sun. So just something to keep in mind. And then another thing to think about is slope. So you can do a rain garden on a very sloped area, but it does take a lot of extra work because the rain garden is supposed to have that flat bottom, and if the land is really crooked, you're trying to adjust that land a lot. If you have to have a retaining wall to make it high enough for it to be flat, if it's over 2 feet in height, it's not something we can give recommendations on. At that point, you would need to talk to like an engineer. A 2 foot retaining wall to hold back water you're directing to it is a whole different scenario. So you could do a bunch of tiny rain gardens, kind of like what you see in this. Like it's kind of the land looks like little steps, and each one of those is a small retention area. But sometimes a slope can be a really limiting factor because it's just going to take a lot more um, work or a lot more expense to do that. So, and that's also something that we could come out and look at and try to see if it's something worth doing. So, alrighty. So now that we've gone over obstacles and what we're looking for, and we're trying to find our location, I wonder if anybody can tell me when they're looking at this picture um, for Rain Garden A, does anybody see any pros or cons to this rain garden? You can just unmute yourself and shout it out, put it in the chat. Um, yes, Kimberly, there's septic there. So, rain garden A, not a good choice. That would be trying to put water directly on top of your septic. That's no good. Um, Also, if you look at the little white dots, those are your downspouts. There's not a downspout on that corner, so it would be hard to get water there, and you don't want water there. So, alrighty, how about um, Rain Garden B? What is some of the obstacles or problems that you see for Rain Garden B? Let's see. I know it takes a little bit of time to type up, but let's see. Oh, electric. Yes. You would be putting water directly on top of electric. Not not what you want to do. You don't want to be digging on top of your electric lines. Does anyone see any other obstacles with B? Because there's two other ones that make B not the best choice. Even though it's really close to downspouts 1 and 3. Yep, it doesn't have the 10-foot setback, especially to the one house. So yes, it's too close to the house. Also, it's underneath one of the trees, so that would be a lot of digging around roots. So B is just out of the question too. So then if you look at C, C is not over power lines. It's not by the foundation. So C has a lot of sun. It would be great for many, many plants. So that would be your best bet. And some people would run downspout 3 to it. Some people would run 3 and 2. 2 would be a little tricky. Alrighty, Linda, you have a question.
Yes, it is an obstacle question.
Mhm.
The house that I have this in mind for, where it collects water,
Mhm.
happens to be where the gas line is, and then the
Oh,
water line to the house, and then the
yeah.
electric.
Yeah.
If I rule all that area out, it takes up a good chunk of the yard. Is it
Right.
just the electric that's an obstacle, or is gas and water an obstacle as well?
It's it's all the utilities. You want to avoid digging by your utilities. Yeah, I would say that does put you in a hard spot. Um, but if you're in Brunswick, we could always come out, take a look, and see what other options you have too. Because it could be a very small one, or a rain garden might not be the option. We might find a way to do like a swale if you're getting a lot of water on your property. Because is it coming right towards your house?
It happens to be up against the foundation, and then a
Yeah.
nice line over those utilities that come out from that area.
Okay.
And we actually put trees there to try and suck up that water, two pines and a tulip tree,
Oh
and
man.
it still will pool. And there's just not enough downspouts there, I know,
Right.
to
And
cover it, but there's no other good place to put a downspout.
yeah,
So,
that sounds like a good case for us coming and taking a look. Because it might be trying to redirect the swale, or even just doing retention through like rain barrels or something like that. So that's a great question. Yeah, you really don't want to be digging on top of your utilities. So, but alrighty. Okay. I appreciate the questions and comments. Thank you, everyone. Okay, so the next step for planning is right now you've avoided your obstacles, you found a location, you want to calculate the size. And how you calculate the size is through three different things, and that is a percolation test, where you're getting your water from, and the roof size or the area that's draining into that. So, um, the percolation test, we have it all outlined on page 14 of the guide, but it's a pretty simple process. Say this was one of the people that put in a rain garden last year, and I'm so glad she took pictures. You dig a hole the width of a shovel and about 18 inches down. So you can see she's got her leg in there. It's about 18 inches down. And the first step is you fill it with water. You let it drain overnight, and this gives it time to soak into the soil around it. And then you top it off with water the next day. So once it's topped off with water, then you start timing it. Does it drain within 24 hours? And does it drain? Does it take longer than 24 hours to drain? So those, however long it takes to drain, over or under, is going to affect the size and also how deep you dig your rain garden. So you can make note of this on page 14. Once you do it, you can write it down, circle it, mark it in your book. And this way you don't have to remember it later, because, you can think, oh, was it under a day, over a day? But that does affect the size and the depth of your garden. Okay. The second thing is the water source. So there's two types of rain gardens. There's a traditional rain garden, which the water is directed to that rain garden from a hard surface via a pipe, a downspout, or a direct source. So a traditional rain garden, it will be fed by a pipe or um, something hard like that. The other type of rain garden is what's called a non-traditional rain garden, and this is where water is directed to your rain garden through running off of a surface with undefined or natural edges, such as a swale, a yard, or a parking lot. So to make it a little bit clearer, here we have an example. We have our traditional rain garden. There's a pipe going to it. And the non-traditional rain garden in the second picture, the water source is from a sloped driveway. So that rain garden has all the water coming from the driveway running to it. So depending on which type of rain garden you have, you use different equations. And that's in the book, and that's something we can walk through too, if you decide to go ahead and do rain garden. But this affects the size and how you do your equation. So, okay. The next thing is roof size. So we're going to stick with the traditional rain garden just because it is easier. It's so much straightforward, where you just have to find which downspouter you're using and how big is the section of the roof that feeds into it. So here you see a a little, I guess it's kind of pink part of the roof. And that one goes into a downspout that would feed the rain garden, which is the blue circle. So you measure the roof, the length and width. It can be an estimate. It doesn't have to be perfect. And then once you have the length and the width, you also need your percolation time. So if it was under 24 hours, your percentage that you're going to be using for this equation is 20%. If it's over 24 hours, you're going to use the percentage of 30%. And it's as simple as that. I know it seems like a lot to figure out, but you have the length, the width, and your percentage, and that is the size of your rain garden. Now, the reason why there's different percentages is because a faster draining rain garden can be smaller and deeper. So it can be 20% of that length and width size and 6 inches deep. And that's because it will drain in a time where you're not getting mosquitoes growing and you're not drowning out your plants. So faster draining rain garden is smaller and deeper. A slower draining rain garden needs to be a little bit bigger so that water can spread out, and it needs to be shallower, and this prevents pooling. So that is the only equation that you need to figure out the size. And we have the step-by-step walkthrough in the book on how to do it. So, and if you want a copy of the book, you can come to our office. That way you can write all this down in there. There's worksheet pages, so it walks you step by step. Okay. But if you get a size that's really big, like if you're sending your whole house all the water to a rain garden, the size that you get might be too big for you to manage. So the thing is to plan a size that you can manage. You have your recommended size, but is that too much? Don't worry about it. What you want to do is no matter what size you calculated, just do what you can. Smaller is totally fine. You just want to make sure you have a good overflow. So this is probably the weirdest looking rain garden I've ever seen, but it was a very good picture of a small, very small rain garden with a very obvious outlet or overflow. And that is because during a large rain event, this rain garden's not big enough to handle all the water that's going to it. So you want the excess water to go where you want it. You don't want the water to be stuck in there and drown everything, and you don't want it to blow out part of your berm. So you really need a good overflow, because what you're doing is, think of that tub. You don't want water just flowing all over your yard or wherever. You want it to be directed where you want it. So it's a good comparison, the bathtub and a rain garden. And when you're looking at your overflow, you just want to figure out, where do I want to send this water? So this person sent their excess water to the street because it would have been connected to the storm drain anyways. So the excess water just goes right to where it would have flowed anyways. So that worked for them. Something else is the position of the overflow. So even though a rain garden is supposed to be completely flat, when we do get those really heavy rain events, like it's just pouring and we're getting a third of all of our rain for the year in one day, that water is going to be moving fast. So you want to give it the longest route through your rain garden. This way it slows it down as much as it can, and it helps prevent erosion. So if you look at the bottom iffy corner, if that water's moving really, really fast, that downspout is pouring water directly where the overflow, like right above it. So it could lead to erosion issues. Some people don't pay this any mind. I have seen some issues with a little bit of erosion, so it's just something to think about, but you don't have to think too much about it. Um, okay. So now you have the all the tools that you need to start planning. You um, can get a blank piece of graph paper, or on page 20 of the notebook or the guidebook, there is graph paper, and you can just, draw your house on there, draw where the trees are, where any barriers or obstacles are, and then, you have the size of your garden. So if you do each square is like a square foot, then whatever your number was, you can count that many squares in that shape, even if it is an odd shape, and that's your square footage. So, okay. Any questions about size or shape? And we will have a tiny little break here too, so you can stay and ask questions if anybody needs to stretch. I know it's been 45 minutes, but any questions about rain gardens and their parts or obstacles or the location? Let's see.
Okay, so the picture that you had of the sidewalk, it was a few slides back.
Mhm.
There was like a drainage on the pictures.
Let's
Um,
see.
oh, wait, I think you passed it. No, yeah, it's back. Okay.
It was not this one, right? Another one?
No,
Okay.
It was the one where the picture of
This one?
the nope. Well, may that could work, but
Is
back
it
right here.
right here?
Yep. Nope.
Oh, there we go. Sorry.
Yeah. So these the pictures on the left and in the center.
Mhm.
How is that like a drainage tile there?
Yeah, so they cut part of their sidewalk out and did like a little tile underneath it with a grate on top of it. So this way, as water flows down that area, if it does get leaves or debris or anything, they can pop that grate off and clean like the tile underneath it. So it's not running through the dirt. It does have a hard bottom underneath there. So yeah. Any other questions?
If you just Google trench drain, that'll probably come up.
Yeah. Yeah. And I've seen people do this at the end of driveways too. Because you'll have a lot of water going down the driveway and they don't want it like eroding like right where the driveway meets the street, or if it's draining towards their garage, they want to wick it away. So this is pretty common. Yeah. Okay. Alrighty. And if anybody, let's see, hold on one second. Let me get back to where we were. Okay. Okay. So if anybody does want a break to use the restroom or get a drink of water, we'll do 5 minutes. But if you want questions, we can do that now too. I just know some people get uncomfortable sitting for 45 minutes. Y'all have been wonderful. Let's see. Okay. Oh, it says someone's leaving. Okay. Yep. But this will be recorded. So if anybody does need to check out, the next thing that we are covering is the plants and the construction. But um, it's, yeah, that's actually a lot less time than the whole beginning of all this because planning does save a lot of time later. So, C. Clifford, what's your first name? Oh, that's all right. So, Kimberly, are you excited about rain gardens?
I'm very excited. But I think I'm already overthinking the overflow.
Yeah. I mean,
Yes.
well, that's a nice thing. If there's any point where you're like, I don't know what I'm doing, you can just ask us. Like, you can like send us a drawing of your design and I'd be like, oh yeah, that works out fine. And we do go into the construction of how the overflow works too.
Mhm.
So
Okay.
where whereabouts are you located? Are you in Medina County?
Yeah, I'm on Smith Road.
Oh,
You
yes.
came out. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, okay. Yep. Sorry,
That's
it's been
right.
a long day. Yeah. I'm just glad that we have the option to do this virtually just because with all this snow and this weather, I like people to be safe at home. But this
Yeah.
is
If anything good came out of COVID is we learned how to use Zoom.
I learned how to be a Zoom participant. This is my first time doing a Zoom program, and I realized I would do better if I had another screen.
So you're doing pretty good reading the chat and the screen. Usually people have someone to read the chat for them,
Yeah,
follow the chat while you talk.
yeah. I have two screens, but it's kind of like a tile of pictures on the other one. So it's, yeah, I can see when something goes in, but oh man. Yeah, I know right now it's hard to think about planting because everything's covered in snow, but it's a good time to get the planning done.
Yes.
Yeah.
But my Prairie Moon nursery catalog came in, so
Oh, nice.
yeah.
Yeah, and that's something that I like when people think about the goals is like, do they want to, buy plants or there's plant swaps a lot where you can get
Mhm.
free plants. I don't know. It's planning this far in advance gives people time to really figure out like what they're comfortable
Yeah.
doing. Like
I
how,
definitely can get my hands on some plants, but I do like this catalog because it tells you the season of their bloom and how deep, how wide, you know what I'm saying? Like
yeah.
gives you everything you need to know about the plant. I've never bought anything from them, but I use their catalog all the time.
Say for a pretty local place like where we get all of our native plants, is oh my gosh. Why am I natives in harmony? I'm like, why am I blanking?
Oh, yeah.
Um, but like there's a lot of really good uh native nurseries in the area. They just happen to be one that we order from because Gail, who's in charge of it, has a really good selection of plants. So
She does. And I ordered from her once and I was supposed to pick it up at the Earth Day, but she canceled my order. So
yeah, so
but
sometimes we get that too. We'll get
yeah,
substitutes, but
yeah.
yeah.
But I totally I have heard her talk and stuff. I 100% will look at her plant list before I if I'm going to purchase that and through the plant sale at the Park District.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, Corinne, I see that you're planning on moving some from your backyard. Yes, you did have tons in your backyard and in the garden bed. So, yeah. But alrighty, I hope everyone's back. Um, we're gonna start moving on. I'm so glad I found that GIF that counts down from 5. I didn't know how to do that, so there we go. But yeah, however you want plants, however you can get them, it's great. Okay. All right, so that's actually what we're going to start talking about right now is plants. Um, so we are going to go a little bit into how to plan plants. Now, plants could be its own presentation, um, but some things to consider when you're looking at plants is, are you looking for plants in sun or shaded areas? How tall do you want your plants to be? Their bloom times, the bloom colors. what they look like off season. I know for some people this really matters a lot, like how bad they look when they're not in bloom, or how good their leaves look when they're not in bloom. So kind of the off season is something to think about too. Something I like to think about because I'm a lazy gardener is simplicity. I like having a couple plants that I can easily identify so it's easier to weed. Um, it, but these are all just some things to consider. And the main rule I like is you want to inspire your neighbors because an ugly rain garden might do harm, and you don't want to do any harm. Sometimes people will just be like, that person has weeds, and I don't want any rain gardens anywhere near me. It's just weeds. Well, it's, I think because rain gardens aren't so well known at the moment, it does make a difference to kind of have them be a showcase of possibilities. So, um, and when choosing plants, I always like to know what I'm looking at. And here, like in the booklet on page 21, I say it goes into the difference between native plants, cultivars, and non-native plants. And I think it even goes into invasive, yes. So in the book, we have a whole page just devoted to this. So native plants are plants that grew up in this area, evolved with this area, and can handle our rain, can handle our drought. They're made like in this ecosystem. So here we have a nine bark with white flowers and green leaves, and that is our native nine bark. Cultivar is something where certain um, characteristics are bred so that they are presented in a way that they aren't naturally. So here we have a cultivar nine bark with purple leaves, and that one is actually a lot harder for our native insects and butterflies and caterpillars to use because um, they can't eat those purple leaves. It's a lot harder for them. Um, and then a non-native one would be like the butterfly bush. And it's, I don't know, I would make my mom really sad if she were to hear that I were to say every butterfly bush should be torn out and replaced with something else because it's not native. It doesn't serve our butterflies, bees, insects the same way. And actually, I think the butterfly bush is now being considered and evaluated to see if it's going to be an invasive plant because of how it's escaping into ecosystems and causing problems. So, um, let's see. I do see a question in the chat. Oh, there we go. Let's see. Oh, this area. So, yes, I do mean Northeast Ohio. Um, I usually look at what's called a native range of a plant, and that is, you type in the Latin name and you look at the native range, and if parts of Ohio are included in that, then especially when it breaks it down by county, I'm I'm like, if it's in this county, I consider it, native to this area. Sometimes people do more so, like if it's found east of the Rockies, then that is what we mean by this area. So some people really even break it down to North or South Ohio. So you can get as picky or as vague as you want to be. But native range maps of plants really help with that. Or you can come to our office. We have a whole book on recommended native plants. Um, so, and one thing that's great about native plants is that if you look at these root systems, um, they are incredibly so much deeper than non-native plants, and this means that they can tap into that groundwater during the droughts. They can absorb a lot more water, which is perfect for a rain garden, and that root system also adds a lot of organic material back into the soil. So that's really nice. And when you're choosing plants, you can do things like there's bloom times and colors, so you can choose, when things are in bloom. And, if you want, something to be in bloom from April to October, then you can choose, which plants fill that niche. We have a whole booklet about that, and I will put a link to that on the YouTube recording of this. So, and I said that wrong. Oh my goodness, that makes me feel out of touch when I talk like that. Um, but I will include a link to that pamphlet. So if you're looking for native plants, you will have access to them. And that is something also that our office can help with. So if you have your location and your shape planned, this is an example of a prescription planting that I drew up for a church that wanted to put in a big rain garden. And all the little shapes were different plants with heights that corresponded to how they wanted it higher in the back towards the big tree. So that's something that we can do for you too. This woman, Helen, she did a great job of planning one. She had a list of 29 plants. Very ambitious. That is not my style, but it is a lot of people's style. I've seen where people can do as little as, 5 if they really just want to start off with something. So it can be as big and grand or as small and reserved as you want. But something that I like about with her design is she walked it out in the wintertime. And that's why I included this picture was once she got her size, she walked it out to see if that was going to be a good um, location and size, and then she went planning from there. So in the how-to guide from pages 25 to 27, there's different examples of rain garden designs, some for full sun, some for partial sun, some for full shade, just to give you an idea of what's possible. Okay, any questions about plants before we move into building the rain garden? Okay, nope. Okay. And like I said, plants could be its own presentation. We do presentations on just plants. So if you want more information, we can go into that. But let's get into the construction. So installing your rain garden. At this point, you'll have your design drawn out. It'll be away from any obstacles. You'll know where your utilities are. And now you have your design drawn. So you want to transfer your design, direct your water to it, dig the basin, make sure it's level, put good soil into it, plant it, and maintain it. So we'll go through how to do that. So when you transfer your drawing, you can be as precise or rough as you like. So in this example, they laid out some tape measures and then flagged the area and then adjusted it and then spray painted it for the edge so that they could dig it. So it could be as rough or precise as you want. As long as it's roughly the size that you had planned, then it all works out. Okay. And then the next thing you want to think about is how are you going to get your water there? So you can do a couple different ways. First, you want to make sure that your rain garden is downhill from your water supply. Sending water uphill doesn't work, not easily and not for this at all. So you can do a over the ground downspout that comes out like the top picture. The bottom picture, you have a gravel swale where they didn't want to have piping go the whole way. That does require a little more maintenance just because of grass. I know grass came up earlier. Um, grass is very persistent. But in the picture to the right, you'll see that there's a buried pipe, and that's actually our office. People are allowed to come out and take a look at it. So you can either do above ground, buried underground, depending on your slope, or a gravel swale. So, and here we get into how you want your pipe positioned. So your berm is going to be a tiny bit higher than the bottom of the pipe, but the overflow will be level. So you can see that dotted line, that is the like the curve of the overflow. It cuts through that berm and the extra water goes there. So you want to make sure that that is all level. So that's a finished example. But when you're beginning, you have your original grade of your soil, and this is with the pipe over top of the ground, like what you see here. And what you do is you get a line level or a string level. You put a post at your inflow and a post at where your berm's going to be, and you make sure that it is level. And then now you want to start to figure out how deep you're going to dig from the inflow. And this is all depended on your percolation test. So if it drained under 24 hours, you want to dig 6 inches down. If it drained over 24 hours, you want to dig it 3 inches down. So this is why it's good to use that guide booklet, because then you don't have to remember things. You can just go back and reference that, because that would be on page like 14. So yeah, so you dig down that depth. So this one, it's 3 inches down, and that's the depth of your rain garden from the bottom of the inflow. And you want to keep the topsoil because you're going to mix like compost or like healthy soil in with it. So, okay. So you dig down your 3 inches in this example. And if you had really, really bad draining soil, like if it's clay, just like if it's just pure clay, you want to dig about 2 to 6 inches down more to add a mixture of your original soil and your compost. So it's going to be your rain garden depth plus the 2 to 6 inches. So that is going to be your bottom. Now, when you're digging that deeper part, that soil is what you're going to use for the berm. So your angled soil is now level, and that bottom 2 to 6 inches is now going to be used for the berm. And you can see that little circle that has the overflow. The berm, you can see how that overflows a little bit lower and lets that water come out. All righty, just by like an inch or so. Hey, now if it's a really steep area, this is where it gets tricky, because you won't be digging too much earth out, but you'll need more earth to build up. So if you look at the light tan part, that's your dugout part, that is so much less than the dashed darker brown part, that's the berm. So what we did at our office, because we did have a bit of a steep grade, we buried our pipe part of the way. So you can see now that tan part that we dug down is about equal to the earth that we moved. So sometimes digging a ditch for your pipe to go further down saves you a lot of work later. And what this looked like, this is actually the one on the right is our office. So we ended up not having to dig super deep, just the 3 inches, and then we put the soil onto the berm. So here you can see the level bottom and the berm. So that is what your rain garden starts looking like. Okay. And it should be level. So the bottom of your pipe should be level to the top of the overflow, and then the berm is like 1 inch higher. Okay. And then you want to go through it, just make sure it's mostly level. Doesn't have to be perfect because you're going to add a little bit of your amended soil back in. So this is Elizabeth Heiser. She's one of our board supervisors, and she had a giant rain garden. So she had a lot of amendments to put in there. So she ended up mixing it with a little rototiller. And okay, see, question about how do you want to make sure it's level? So that's why that red line, that's a string level or a line level, and you can just, that red line is your string at the top of the poles, and you can just take a ruler and go across it to make sure that's level. I think I had one picture. Oh, there we go. So yeah, across the bottom, you kind of want it to stay level on the ruler, just mostly. You don't want like a 3-inch dip somewhere else. So I hope that helps. Okay, we'll go back. And you might have to do it twice because if you're doing the bottom is level, once you get your amendments, like your compost or your like organic topsoil that you might want to mix in with yours, you're going to add it back in and bring it back up. So here you have the dugout garden, the amendments are added in, you mix the soil, the original soil in with the amendments, and you mix it all up. So they didn't need a rototiller, they just dumped some together and mixed it with a rake. And then you want to make sure that is level 2. But you want to make sure it's level after you lightly compact it. So you can do a little like stepping down or stomping on that compost and soil mix, because if it's lightly compacted, then it's not so airy, and that's better for your plants. So, you just kind of want to pour it in there, mix it up, step all over it, and then, make sure it is, level. So sorry, I love peanuts, and those little dancing kids are just great. So, and then one of the last steps you do before you start planting is you want to add some gravel to the inflow area and to the overflow. And this just makes sure that you're not going to get erosion at that point where the water is coming in or going out. And from there, you plant into that level, that like mixed soil level, and your plants will be lower than the inlet and lower than the overflow. And this is just an example of some water loving plants. And then you just add some mulch on there. It protects your plants. And the first year or so, you do want to water them between some of the dry spells just to keep them going. And this is an example of, I think earlier in the percolation test, you saw that her leg was in the hole. This was the garden that they put in. And so you can see, there is a berm. She decorated it with the rocks. I think there's maybe like 8 native plants, and then they have the overflow and also a sign. So if you're in the Make It Rain program, you do get a sign when you install your rain garden properly. And say if somebody else is interested in doing that, we can see about if there's a possibility we could get you a sign or not. But the reason why we like signs is that it does show that this is an intentional area, and it is, protecting our streams and rivers. Um, Also, whenever you do a rain garden, it's good to have a maintenance plan. Um, let's see. Oh, and we do have a question about if it's going to be tricky to keep it level while adding the plants. So, yeah, it's more that you don't want a really, really low area where you're going to get ponding. So it doesn't have to be perfectly level. Like you will get parts where it might be taller around a plant, or a plant might be a little bit lower, and as long as it's not just going to be an area where the water pools, um, that's probably the biggest part for, trying to keep it somewhat level. So, um, because if an area is too much deeper, then you're going to just have water settling in one area and it's not going to be functioning properly, but it'll be okay if it's pretty close. Yes, and if you do have some plants with giant root systems and you're like transplanting them, you can dig deeper. If you're just doing seeds, you don't have to do that. If you're doing young plants, maybe not so much. You can even put a water-loving tree in a rain garden. So if you're doing a small tree, um, like you could do that too. And then, of course, you would have to dig a lot deeper too. So those are all things that are possible. And it's not a perfect science. It's just um, sometimes if the ground is crooked, if people don't get it close, then all the water's like settling only in one area, and it's not able to let as much water soak in. So, um, okay. But for some maintenance things, um, cleaning the inflows important. Sometimes if you do get a heavy rain event, you might get some of the mulch and water mixing and it might go back into the inflow a little bit. Some people put a little like cap on the bottom of it. So I don't know. Someone was worried about mice getting in it. And I don't know. I guess it depends on, if you have a lot of mice where you're at trying to do that. We haven't had any problem with that at all at our office. And we do have mice and skinks and other animals. But with the water that comes out, we just clear it out every once in a while. Maintaining an edge is something important too. For maintenance, addressing erosion, like you see in this bottom picture, you have where the water was moving too fast and it wore it away. Raking that down, maybe planting something there, reestablishing that helps. So those are all things to think about for maintenance. Also, if you can leave leaves in that area, that's great. In the middle picture, that little larva on that leaf is a lightning bug larva, and they love wet, leafy areas. And part of the reason why we're struggling with lightning bug populations dropping is because, we get rid of those wet areas and we get rid of all the leaves. So sometimes leaving leaves and stems and seeds, like the dead part of the plant standing, is really important. Because also that picture that has the stem with all the little holes, that is a native bee using that dead stem for food storage or even for like its larva over winter. So dead plants are really important part of the ecosystem. Okay. Oh, good. We're doing good on time. All right. So we've gone over a lot today. And if you're looking at just what your next steps are, if you're interested in putting in a rain garden, it's take your measurements and see if it's comfortable for what you feel like you can do. If you feel like you can do this, then call oops. Make sure you're not planting this on top of your utility lines. And then go through the book and use it as much as you can. Do your sketches, choose plants you like, rough out your area, and then make your goals. And then when we finally get a warm day, do a percolation test. That won't be for a while, but that is the summary of how to do a rain garden. And sometimes there's classes that are like 5 days long about how to do this. So I hope an hour and 20 minutes wasn't too bad for everyone. Did anybody have any questions? This will be recorded and I will put it on our YouTube page. My email's up there if you want to jot it down so that if you can't find it, you can always let me know, hey, I missed that, and I want you to email me the link and I can do that. Oh, well, thank you, everybody. I see some really nice comments in the chat. Yeah, if you're excited, that's great. Like now's the perfect time to plan and any step of the way, especially if you're in Medina County, if you get stuck at any point, give our office a call. My phone number's up there. And you can just ask any question about rain gardens. We'll help out how we can. We can set up an appointment to come out. Maybe not when there's like a foot of snow on the ground. So, all righty. All right. Well, thank you, everybody. Let's see. Any other questions before I stop the recording? All righty. Well, thank you, everybody. And if you're in the Make It Rain program, I will put out an email just with the checklist for dates and everything, and I'll email you this information directly. For everyone else, thank you for coming. I really appreciate everyone being here. All righty. I'm gonna stop the recording.